Yeah, you can watch a copy if you want. Is this one good? Is that one good?
What do you do when a pickup is flying?
Oh, I want to watch the front video, I remember.
Here in the middle of the Egyptian desert, something strange is happening. These giant green circles have been popping up all over the place. And it looks like a massive river is forming, cutting right through the desert, with dozens of smaller canals running alongside it and more still under construction. There are even tracks in the sand that look like underground pipes. Is Egypt trying to flood the desert? New roads are appearing, along with huge buildings. And then we see this. Military installations. Not just one, but several. So we decide to check it out ourselves, fly in and have someone show us everything, on site. But no one is willing to talk. Some people seem afraid for their own safety. What's going on here? The green circles led us to massive construction projects, carved out of the sand at record speed, to wild plans to flood the desert, to a repressive regime and a country struggling through years of economic crisis, and to a multi-billion-dollar project meant to feed the population, while secretly pursuing entirely different goals.
If you look at satellite pictures of the country, you can see this change.
What we do know is that it's a military project.
It's quite fascinating to see the colour of a country change.
Their census itself shows you that it's not working.
It's off budget, it's a black box.
Interesting.
Our research starts on Google Maps. We find the green circles all over Egypt, including here in the middle of the desert. They don't look that big at first, but when you zoom in, you realize these circles must be hundreds of meters wide. A little to the left, you can already see the outlines of the next circles etched into the sand. We head to the NASA website and pull up some before and after satellite images.
How the fuck you
Most of
plant
these
shit in the
circles seem
sand?
to have appeared within the last 10 years. The description below the images mentions the name for this area, the New Delta. The New Delta is a massive agricultural project run by the Egyptian government. It's meant to achieve several official goals: boost farming, reduce Egypt's dependency on food imports, create jobs, and improve the country's overall food supply. To do that, the project wants to transform almost 10,000 square kilometers of barren wasteland into fertile farmland. Traditionally, farming in Egypt has mostly happened here, along the narrow strip of the Nile and up here in the Nile Delta, right on the Mediterranean coast. Since nearly the entire country is desert, only around 4% of its land can actually be used for agriculture. That's a tiny percentage compared to the other countries. Egypt is home to 116 million people, more than any other country in the Arab world. By 2050, it's expected to reach 175 million. The vast majority lives on this tiny sliver of land. It's one of the most densely populated regions on the planet. Here, people, farms, and factories are all competing for the scarce land near the water. Housing demand keeps rising, forcing farmland to be converted into residential areas. The New Delta could change that in one stroke. According to a state-run newspaper, Egypt could expand its arable land by nearly a quarter. And the country could certainly use it.
Okay, so how's that bad then? I don't get it.
Food security in Egypt has been tight for years. 8.5% of the population are undernourished, according to the Global Hunger Index. 1 in 5 children suffer from stunted growth due to malnutrition. Many staple foods, especially wheat, have to be imported. In 2021, about 80% of Egypt's wheat imports came from just 2 countries, Russia and Ukraine. At the time, that heavy dependence was already a problem for the Egyptian government. A year later, Russia invaded. Wheat shipments grinded to a halt, and the country's already fragile food situation spiraled even further. Egypt hopes to fix this by massively boosting its own agriculture, especially in the New Delta. We want to know how the project is doing, but our online research quickly hits a dead end. So we decide to fly there ourselves and see the sudden greeting of the
So I have a
desert.
question, chat. Guys,
We start
you know other countries, like other countries will like go there and have these little zones where they could fucking have people like produce their shit or whatever, right? Why can't you cannot like rent people's land in other countries so you could farm your own shit and bring it back home? Can you not do that?
making plans. But soon we realize it's not going to be that simple. The moment people hear we want to shoot, they start backing out one by one. They say it's too risky. One expert admits he's worried about his personal safety. We try everything, but no one will talk to us. We end up reaching out to a good friend in Egypt to see if he can help.
Indeed, it's a bit tricky to discuss critically in Egypt, especially if it's something government funded, of course.
That could explain why nobody wants to speak on the record. The New Delta project isn't run by some random company or even a government department. It's being pushed by the military.
So the government.
In early 2011, hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets in Cairo, demanding the end of the regime. They're protesting corruption, violence, and the country's ongoing economic crisis. For 18 days, protesters and police face off. In the end,
Guys, the government is not the military? I don't get it.
autocratic president Hosni Mubarak resigns after nearly 30 years in power. Millions of Egyptians celebrate the fall of the dictatorship.
xQc.
Hope is in the air. The country holds its first democratic elections in 2012. The majority votes for Mohamed Morsi, an opponent of the old regime and candidate for the Muslim Brotherhood. But things barely improve under his leadership. Just 1 year later, mass protests erupt again until Morsi is overthrown by the military. What follows is a massacre. According to Human Rights Watch, soldiers kill over 1,000 demonstrators during the brutal crackdown on pro-Morsi protest camps. The man behind the coup is General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. He officially runs for office in 2014, facing off against a token opponent. He ends up winning by a landslide, securing around 97% of the votes.
What?
Independent observers suspect the election might have been rigged.
Wait, what?
The new president promised
97? Guys, am I wrong thinking that?
observers
Chat, I feel like if it was like, let's say, you know, like back in the days, like the troll dude, like these nuts, whatever. I think if you were to put these nuts against anybody, against like best candidate of all time in any country, it would still get more than 3%. That's crazy. 97, it sounds crazy.
suspect the election might have been rigged. The new president promises stability, security, and economic growth. But that quiet hope is quickly shattered. El-Sisi drastically reshapes the country, steering it back into dictatorship. Human rights take a steep dive.
Who knows?
Peaceful protests are treated as terrorism. The press is silenced. Government critics and journalists are persecuted, arrested, and even tortured. Thousands are still behind bars today, and many have simply vanished without a trace. Speaking out against the regime means putting your life on the line.
Interesting.
The same regime also has its hands on the New Delta, just like on virtually every public construction project. If we want to talk to experts about the project, we have to look outside the country. And that's exactly what we do.
When it comes to projects like this, there's really no transparency.
That's Edmund Bauer. We met him in Dubai. He works as a journalist for AGB Insight. He frequently writes for The Guardian, where he published this article on El-Sisi's desert project.
That there's very little concrete information coming out of.
I think when you talk about the whole world, let's be honest, things are non-transparent or pseudo-transparent or whatever, right? And even then, it's like a luxury that like the Western world has some level of pseudo-transparency or whatever, and it's still pretty opaque compared to like everybody else. It's like a standard that's like not really applicable to like a lot of these other countries, no? Like, I don't know, like, at all.
Any of the Egyptian sources about these projects, other than that they're great projects and that they're covering a lot of land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's David Sims. He's an urban planner, economist, and the author of this book, which also dives into Egypt's desert projects. They say that the New Delta isn't the first mega project of its kind.
You could say it probably has to do with a certain imagery of pioneer spirit. We can conquer the desert. This has been around for a long time.
Over the past 100 years, there have been multiple proposals and concrete plans to flood the desert. During massive undertakings like Egypt's New Delta project, teams have to stay perfectly aligned to make progress.
I mean, why not?
But in meetings, ideas can fly by too fast to capture. Miss a few key points, and suddenly decisions get delayed, actions slip through, and the whole team pays the price. That's where Plod comes in option. Click the link in the description for 20% off.
I think I bought too many of these. I bought like 300.
This is the Qattara Depression, a natural lowland right in the middle of the desert. Parts of it lie as much as 133 meters below sea level.
Oh, that's pretty good.
At the start of the 20th century, people come up with the idea of flooding the depression to create a massive lake, roughly the size of Lake Ontario, not for farming, but for power generation. In 1926, a British geologist lays out a detailed plan. He proposes digging tunnels from the Mediterranean so seawater can flow into the depression. The desert heat would then evaporate the water at the same rate that new water flows in, creating a continuous cycle. Turbines installed in the tunnels would then harness that flow to constantly generate electricity. But the costs are too high and the project is stopped. According to Sims, the CIA takes a brief interest in the idea in the 1950s. Then, in the 1970s, a German hydraulic engineer revisits the plans. He proposes detonating 213 nuclear bombs to blow up the entire stretch between the depression and the sea. No tunnels needed. The seawater would simply flow into the depression through a natural river. Most recently, in 2023, an Egyptian consulting firm was hired to conduct a feasibility study. But the Qattara project remains a pipe dream to this day.
That's not too bad, right?
The costs are astronomical. No one knows if it's really doable, and there's a serious risk of salting the groundwater in the process. And those are just a few of the many concerns. In the 1960s, then-President Gamal Abdel Nasser lays the groundwork for the Tushka project, a plan to reclaim a huge stretch of desert in the south for farming, industry, and housing. The project is later revived and expanded under President Mubarak in the 1990s. The idea is to tap man-made Lake Nasser and pump water into new canals to irrigate farmland.
Tushka is in the way in the south. For years was touted as reclaiming 500,000 or 1 million acres of land, and is going to have an enormous population.
Tushka was pitched as the solution to Egypt's demographic and economic problems.
And that was in around the year 2000, 2004. And then it finally appeared that almost none of it was ever done.
Recent satellite images do show some scattered fields, but the promised megacities are nowhere to be seen. And yet, even today, the government keeps clinging to the plans.
It shows, if nothing else, how difficult these projects are and how big the potential is for waste, not just of money.
Then there's the Sinai project, announced in the late 90s. Once again, huge desert areas were supposed to be reclaimed for agriculture and irrigated by a new canal.
It was called the El Salam Canal.
Part of the canal was actually built and put to use, but most of the project never materialized.
What?
There were countless potential problems, from soil salinization and water pollution to coastal areas being eroded by the sea.
So it looks like every one of Egypt's rulers has to have these mega projects to anchor his success and popularity.
But save for a few exceptions, most of these projects fail. The New Delta project is another attempt to revitalize the city, open up land for crops and communities, and make the country more independent. Will it work this time?
I mean, they're trying, though.
To grow anything here, you
obviously
obviously need water. Lots of it. The project draws from multiple sources: groundwater, polluted water from this lake near Alexandria, and most importantly, the country's lifeline, the Nile. The plans include several canals.
One of the few sources of information is Google Earth. Thank God for Google Earth, because it shows the reality, at least you can see.
The first canal runs here. It channels Nile water from the so-called Rosetta Branch and stretches about 42 kilometers to the eastern limits of the New Delta. You can see several smaller canals shaking across the sand. Some are still under construction and supposed to carry the water deeper into the desert. The second large canal is even more impressive and about 114 kilometers long. It carries a supposed 3.5 billion cubic meters of water each year, starting at another canal up here and cutting straight across the desert. The water moves both above and below ground, from station to station.
That's pretty cool.
But it doesn't just flow downhill on its own. In some places, it has to be pumped over 100 meters up.
What?
They're taking it off the Nile at an altitude of 16 meters, and they have to pump that up to 120 or 130 meters.
That
Pumping
sounds
stations like
laborious.
this one
It's a lot
push the
of-
water through the waterways, guiding it here to the beating heart of the new delta, Hamad, the largest wastewater treatment plant in the world.
Chat, if the downslope is bigger than the upslope, can't they use the downwards trend to generate power so that they could use the power to the upwards trend?
Built in just 2 years, it was completed by June 2023 and sprawls across 320,000 square meters. At the front, 15 massive basins sit side by side. They take in polluted industrial and agricultural wastewater and send it to these 3 treatment plants. The plant can purify up to 7.5 million cubic meters of wastewater per day. That's enough to cover the daily water needs of 24 million people in the US. But the new delta taps another water source besides rivers and lakes. Far below the desert lies the world's largest fossil groundwater reservoir, the Nubian Sandstone Aquifer System. It stretches beneath 4 countries and is estimated to hold between 150,000 and 370,000 cubic kilometers of water. That's more water than the Nile would discharge over the course of 500 years. The water has been trapped here for thousands of years, locked between layers of rock. Now it's pumped up to the surface for the new Delta project.
Sounds fair enough.
But even this groundwater comes with a catch.
When we talk about the aquifer, it's tempting to think of it as a big tank of water sitting under the country. You can put a straw
Dude, is that a fucking... Yo, what kind of tattoo is that, chat? Is that fucking Squid Games or is that PlayStation? What the fuck?
in it and water comes out. That's not what this is.
No one knows just how much of the water down there can actually be used. And Bauer says that the deeper you go, the saltier the water gets. So there's a real risk that the water pumped up from the aquifer could eventually be too salty to use. And while the reservoir may be huge, it's still finite.
It's not sustainable. You're dealing with water which probably isn't replenished.
The water
I mean, dude, this is a lot of probablys or whatever. Dude, we know for a fact you cannot replenish oil, and we're pumping that shit the fucking out the wazoo like there's no tomorrow. But these guys in the desert, they got nothing. They got fucking salty water trying to fucking pump the water. Oh, this could be finite. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Bro. What are these standards we're applying to these countries, man? Come on, bro.
from all these sources
I
flow
don't
through
get it.
underground pipelines out to the cultivation areas. And that's where they appear. The green circles.
I don't see the problem. I don't see the problem.
Their shape comes from center pivot irrigation systems. Water sprinklers sweep across the fields like the hands of a clock. You'll find these systems all over the world, in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and even the US. Thanks to them, people can grow corn, peanuts, potatoes, and even wheat right in the middle of the desert. Wheat in particular uses a huge amount of water.
It's better than just flood irrigation, but it's not very efficient water-wise. In other words, you're going to need a lot of water.
The soil has to play along too. Sure, you can grow wheat on dry land, but the desert soil in the new delta is far less fertile than the rich riverbanks along the Nile.
These land reclamation projects in the
Well,
desert
Chet, also,
usually
yeah.
only have one
Chet,
crop.
aren't they gonna have maybe some problems with the mineral? Like, if it's, I mean, does wheat not become after a lot of
Crop a year.
lot
It's
of-
too hot, so they only get one crop a year, whereas in the old
Crops
land, you get two
start to
and three
lose
crops
their-
a year.
To boost
Minerals?
yields, farmers use special fertilizers and pesticides. They can be
It
mixed
rotates.
directly into the irrigation water. The Egyptian government claims it's sustainably developing these areas for agriculture, but Edmund Bauer disagrees.
If you look at pictures from above, what you'll see circles of green, which are surrounded by land which is quite clearly still desert. And in fact, under the topsoil in which crops are being grown, it is still desert. And in fact, if you take away the central pivot systems that are irrigating these circles, it will go back to being desert. Nothing has changed.
You can already guess
Okay,
from
so-
satellite images where new fields are planned. It gives you a sense of just how massive the new delta is planned to be.
I don't get
The
it.
project is overseen by a government agency that reports directly to the Egyptian Air Force. As for how much it really costs is anyone's guess.
It's a black box. We don't know how much money has gone into it, and we don't know how much money is coming out. And we don't know where that money is necessarily going.
Running agriculture in the middle of the desert doesn't come cheap. You need processing plants, warehouses, a network of roads and cold storage units, grain silos, and artificial rivers. According to The Guardian, the longest canal alone costs around $5 billion. The water treatment plant wasn't exactly a bargain either. Then there's the cost of pumping up the groundwater.
Yeah, that's pretty cheap.
And in some places, the water from the Nile has to be lifted over 100 meters.
So this is going to be very expensive. As a matter of fact, some of the earlier studies of Egypt's agricultural potential in the
Yo, $5 billion for a fucking massive, huge canal? This is like fucking nothing. Are you kidding me? Dude, $5 billion. That's how much the fucking... It's how much the fucking U.S. government spent on fucking napkin for the fucking White House last month. Like, what the fuck?
desert sort of came to the conclusion that if you have to lift the water more than 30 meters, it's uneconomic. You cannot grow things with a value that will cover the cost of the energy needed to lift it.
In 2021, the New Delta project was presented with a budget of roughly $10.2 billion. But by May 2025, inauguration of the wheat harvest season, President el-Sisi said that the infrastructure alone would cost somewhere between $9 and $13 billion.
In terms of the finances of New Delta, we really have to go on the bits and pieces that get released to us in speeches, in press statements. We have to sort of take them at face value because there isn't clear records being produced.
The New Delta project was pitched as Egypt's answer to its food insecurity. But what has it actually changed so far?
Now, in one sense, this has been so far a successful project in the fact that you can see crops coming out of it.
But much of the harvest never ends up on Egyptians' plates. It's exported.
By all accounts, money has been made off of this project, and you can see that, if nothing else, the export figures, the agricultural export figures.
According to the government, Egypt now exports more than 400 different agricultural products to over 160 countries. In 2023 alone, a record 7.5 million tons of produce left the country, bringing $8.8 million in revenue.
Yo, Chad, this shit is no-brainer. Are you telling me that a 13, even if it was worst scenario, oh my god, they lied, it's 13 billion. It's 1 3/4 of a year, and this shit's profitable. This shit's insane. What the fuck?
Top sellers are fruits, vegetables,
This shit's
and nuts.
busted.
Egypt is increasingly focusing on high-value export crops, and the New Delta plays a central role in that strategy.
The focus seems to be, and Sisi has more or less said this himself, why would we grow wheat?
Go back and read them. It's million? No, it's in B. It's in billions. It's in B. 10 billion to make 8 billion. And the year after, you're operating on nearly pure profits forever. Dude, you know that a lot of shit that people do, coaches do, will pay out in like fucking 40, 50 years, right? What? Oh, revenue, so not net. Oh yeah, the margins are pretty thin probably. Yeah. This will pay out in fucking 20 years then, fuck it.
In records for different agricultural products to over 160 countries. In 2023 alone, a record 7.5 million tons of produce left the country.
Guys, it's a million tons of produce. It's not me. No, Chad didn't listen. You guys asked. You guys said I didn't listen. You didn't listen. It's millions of produce, man.
Bring $8.8
This
million
Chad's
in
busted,
revenue.
on God.
Top sellers are fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Egypt is increasingly focusing on high-value export crops, and the New Delta plays a central role in that strategy.
The focus.
I missed it again. Oh, what the fuck?
Left the country, bringing $8.8 million in revenue.
Oh, that's fucking dog shit. What? In rev? Net? That's... What? No, none of this makes sense. I don't get it anymore. Guys, he meant billions. Guys, he meant billions. There's no way... Guys, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. Yeah, he misspoke. He has to be. Yo, how do you export 7 bill in revenue and only net 8 mil? That would be the thinnest margins in the history of trade. That would be like a 0.001% profit. That's crazy, brother man.
Top sellers are fruits, vegetables,
Yeah,
and nuts.
it's in billions. It's literally in billions. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care.
Egypt is increasingly focusing on
misspoke.
high-value export crops, and the New Delta plays a central role in that strategy.
The focus seems to be, and Sisi has more or less said this himself, why would we grow wheat, for example, which we're not going to be competitive in, which you need a lot of water and you need a lot of land, whereas we can grow other crops citrus crops, for example.
Put a comment on the video. At 1949, hey Fern, just quick clarification. At 1948, you say 7.8, no, 8 point, we said what? I forgot. Top comment? What? 8.8 million. But with the graphs and video context, I feel like it doesn't make sense. Did you mean billion? Otherwise, apologies. My listening comprehension is not my forte. Am I zero head?
We can export them for much more money, and then we can use that money to import wheat.
That's what most countries that are in this kind of situation would do. So you export high value, and then you import the wheat, which is what they've always done.
Egypt wants to position itself as a major exporting nation and a key player in Africa. It also aims to build a global hub for the supply and storage of grains to become more resilient to future food crises. But the revenue coming from these multi-billion-dollar projects don't seem to reach ordinary Egyptians. Their lives barely improved at all. 2/3 of the population live at or below the poverty line. Food security remains fragile too. Egypt's state coffers are empty. The currency has taken a massive hit in recent years, and the country is drowning in debt. Bauer says most of the money from New Delta.
He replied, guys, stop it, man.
In the middle of the Egyptian
I can't see the replies. They're not loaded in yet. You're stupid. Man,
food
shut
security
up.
remains fragile too.
Man, fuck
Egypt's
you,
state
man.
coffers are empty. The currency has taken a massive hit in recent years, and the country is drowning in debt.
You misspoke.
Bauer says most of the money from New Delta ends up flowing back into the state.
And one thing that they've consistently invested in is weapons. Egypt has got a war on its southern border. There's a civil war in Sudan. There is a war in Gaza on its eastern border. There has been violence to the west. So you can make a good case for buying weapons and investing in defense.
The New Delta project devours massive resources. It's not really sustainable, extremely expensive, and nowhere near delivering the promised food security.
If you're looking at
Yo, how is this not sustainable? If they put in fucking 13 bill at most, and they're making, and it'll profit in 2 years, and then be operating the pure profits, how is this sustainable? Shit's fucking bussin'. Yeah, they mean sustainable in terms of like the water theory, that it's gonna take the water out and it's not sustainable for in fucking 300 years. But come on, bro, that is such a that has to be a long reach. I don't get it. I don't get it.
producing food to feed the country, it will be difficult to do based on using these projects. It's a difficult place to grow wheat. It's a difficult place to grow rice. So there's a very strong case to be made that Egypt will be reliant on food imports for the long run, and can start looking at other ways to secure those routes and to secure that supply chain.
Maybe the real value of these mega projects is not about food at all. They generate headlines and distract from the country's real problems. The regime of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi gets to present itself as a capable and proactive.
Because you can make an announcement, you can give an artist's rendition of what this project will look like. You can very quickly claim credit for something, and then hopefully you'll be able to follow through and build it, and you have this large thing that you can you can unveil. On the surface, it looks like a great answer to lots of intractable problems to do with the growing population and poverty that would be difficult to address in other ways. It's clear why it would be more tempting to go down the route of unveiling new large-scale projects rather than something which would be more of a systemic approach to a problem and more building institutions.
Earlier this year, the government just unveiled its latest mega project, Jirian City, a brand new city rising out of the desert. In just 5 years, is expected to feature luxury apartments, a yacht harbor, skyscrapers of up to 80 stories, and a free economic zone.
A yacht for
Jirian
what?
is meant to attract tourists, create new jobs, and pour money into state projects.
What the fuck are you doing with a yacht in the desert, man? What the fuck are you gonna do?
The era of desert mega projects seems far.
Oh bruh. I mean, these photos, man, I can't.
Create new jobs and pour money into state projects. The era of desert mega projects seems far from over.
That's the future. And the government has decided they're all going to go to the desert.
Okay.
In February 2022, Ethiopia completed a massive gravity dam in the south of its national territory. Its walls reach up as high as the pyramids of Giza, holding back the waters of the Blue Nile, the Nile's most important tributary. Ethiopia plans to double its current energy production thanks to the dam.
So why don't governments that have developed, like the West or whatever, right, seize places that had these opportunities? Like, yo, listen, there's water here. We could do a dam here. Why don't they fucking loan money out to these countries, right? And they go, yo, listen, we'll build this fucking dam, 50 bill, right? You make the energy back, you make some money off the shit, right? You give us 75 bill within fucking 10 years. Fuck this. Done. Too easy. It's too easy. This is too easy. Everybody wins. They get a dam. They pay a little bit of profit on top. It's all good. They help the country, help them develop, right? They make it faster. Well, then just too easy. Why do they do that? China does that? W. I mean, what can you do? It's just business.
Tributary. Ethiopia plans to double its current energy production thanks to the dam. What marks a milestone for Ethiopia sparks panic downstream. Egypt and Sudan fear they'll receive far less water in the future. That kind of control gives Ethiopia a powerful bargaining chip. The Egyptian government calls the dam an existential threat. Relations between the two countries are tense.
What?
The Nile remains Egypt's lifeline. It has to keep flowing for Cairo's ambitious plans to stand even a remote chance. And with them, any hope for a stable food supply. In the end, the dream of greening the desert hinges on a single precious resource.
Water.
Water.
Interesting. I enjoyed the video. Thank you, friend.
In the middle.
Guys, this will always be my take until things change. But I gotta be honest with you, chat. Developed countries use the most demonic fucking methods to get to being a developed country, to get to the top. Literally the most demonic shit. I'm not trying to demonize ourselves and the country we live in, but that's just a reality. That's just reality. Let's be honest. Whether it's fucking slavery, whether it's fucking invasion, stealing, pillaging, whatever the fuck. It is what it is. It means it is what it is, right? And now I feel like the developed countries, and especially the West, are trying to apply these standards and the new standard of today's world to every other country and regard them as like, oh, you can't do this. Yo, don't use the finite water, okay? We over here, we use fucking nuclear bombs and shit. Fuck everybody. We turn people to fucking dust. But you, though, you do not get to use the water. Chill the fuck out on that, okay? Like, come on, man. Really, dude? Like, come on. I don't see it. You would have to explain to me. Show your bitch ass up, play Spider-Man 2. No one cares, Q. Pack it up, little pup. You don't know little bro Zeph. Top Tylenol comment, Brotato chip. You fell off. Ignore him, bro. Guys, am I the only person who pointed out the discrepancy of... See? There you go. Boom. This guy calls it out.
This guy's so fucking smart, just like you. Can I have the phone, please?
You get it. You get it. See, it's an easy transaction. A little bit of a glaze, a little bit of a reward. I play ball. It is what it is. I'm a simple creature. You give me a little glaze comment, okay, you get whatever you want.
Wow, you're looking so smart and handsome today. I can't believe it. Would you like to eat?
Okay, what kind of car you want?
I don't want a card, thank you. I don't have a license.
Goodbye. The top comment is your own channel.
Chat.
Interesting. Buddy, yo, actually clips. Here's what I'm prepared to do with you. Okay? We'll take a gamble. How about that? You're a gamble guy? Yeah. Hold on, clips guy. I play all these games back to back in a marathon, right? You edit the videos, post it, whatever, right? And we compare what we're doing now about everything, right? And if there's some form of fall off, right, where the numbers don't add up, right? And then we calculate the new revenue, right? Hold on now. The difference between the income loss between one month to the other comes out of your paycheck. Actually, it's more of a 1 month loan. Like it has to be paid back in a month. Thoughts? Is that a gamble that you would take? You think that? No, it's not a view that matters. I think you're missing the point entirely. Is that these guys get paid? A lot of editors, whatever. I'm telling you, these games are fun. Playing them all back to back is like these days would be considered the cure suicide. What about it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You want to put this to the test, really?
One hot dog for you, my sir. And you know what? You're so right about that. So smart and intelligent. I really like the way you say that. And I agree with you completely.
Jesus. Chat. I mean, I could marathon all these games in a row. Fucking Spider-Man 2, DS2, Resident Evil 4, Silk Song, and Record. I do all these games
59 months with
in a marathon,
Maguza.
one tap, and then what? Yo, the only thing the only way, you know what's going to be crazy? The only way to come out on top on this, okay, buddy, would be that you just wait for the fall off videos, whatever, right? And then you claim the revenue off these guys. That's the only way you make your money back, editor guy. I'm telling you right now. I'm doing it right now. It is what it is.
Our vets. I don't understand. No, but Citrus, it doesn't make sense. Why are we not using actual water? Where's the water coming from? How is it even being disposed? Why are real people not coming and using a hose?
What?
No, it's coming from this pipe, correct? Where is the pipe leading to? How are we getting water in this pipe? From this, the connector? There's no water on the ground, dummy. And why would we use lake water? Are you dumb? It's being disposed.
Lake water is pretty good. Look, it's in the middle or the outer part of it. It's linked. They just don't show it. It's linked to the middle part that goes both ways, no? Or one of the ends, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where it's connected to. It's connected somewhere. Like what?
Where is the pipe leading to?
They don't have a
How are we
fucking
getting water
teleporter.
in this pipe? From this, the connector?
Wireless water?
There's no water on the ground, dumb.
7 years ago.
That's right, Jim, I'm sorry, you're fired. Get out of here. Right?
This is me to editor after that stupid ass fucking comment, low key.
Ripping the F word, ripping like crazy
Love you,
shit.
chat
Even the
people,
soft day,
glad.
right? Like,
Rose and-
I would understand, okay, you know what, this is, I should be a little bit more mindful, right? But retard is a crazy thing to go to war over. It's a crazy thing to go to war over. Do you understand? Like, if I was going over to, like, people, right, with, like, you know, intellectual disabilities, and I was, like, calling them that, then I would understand people's frustration. I would agree with that. That's terrible. That's not the way we're using it. It's really not. You could argue that, you know, the usage itself is derogatory, sure, but you're living in a dream world. Okay, like, and one day when your streamers, when your favorite streamers decide to wake up from the
Yeah, but also, I think there's a level of separation these days. Also, guys, even people with disabilities, right? Like the classification is that what they're called? Is that what it's called? I feel like that word is almost its own lane now. It's they've changed it. So it's like, yeah, you can use like mental retardation, maybe, right? But I think it's an outdated term. Chat, is it an outdated term? So at that point, you're not even referencing anybody really. It's just like it's kind of doing its own thing. You feel me? It's why I thought, oh, it's really bad. I don't like to use it that much anymore. But even then, you know what I'm saying? R word, dumbass, interchangeably don't, in my opinion, really hurt that old population that would be targeted by this. I don't see it. But if people do, I'll be more harsh to people that use it. But right now, I use it less. I try not to use it none. But people get mad at R word and not dumbass. Well, dumbass is worse though, because imagine you're just a guy who's kind of slow, so he calls you fucking dumb. That's derogatory as fuck. You're born with a certain IQ, a certain brain. Your parents didn't really spend time learning you. You didn't go to school using what you broke. That is literally using your background and what you have in hardware against you. And that's sad. It's even more sad in the R word. That's not even meant towards the people that have mental disabilities. It's a complete different bracket. Come on, bro.
Today we are going to talk about the relationship between acetaminophen and autism. Actually increasing as well by closer to about 3 to 5 years. And we know that maternal and paternal age account for about a 30% increase in risk. But it's not just age. If we look at a lot of children who may have just passed away, that may have resulted in abortion, we may not have been able to save that. 14 people out of 1,679 who were exposed to SSRIs who ended up with autism. But 1,665 people who were autistic in this study were never exposed to SSRIs.
Ah, see, so I said last time actually makes sense, right? I'm in the video where?
So this is where we have to understand that the basic risk is really small.
This is me undercover witnessing racism in front of my eyes. And this is the story of how I got here. In 2018, I pranked a racist group called the English Defense League.
It's good watch. This one or this one? You mean this one? I'll give it a shot.
Today we are going to talk about the relationship between acetaminophen and autism. Dr. K has officially entered the fray. I'm Dr. K, and I have a purpose in life. The White House recently released a statement and held a press conference talking about the link between acetaminophen and autism. And there's a lot of stuff in the statement that I think is actually pretty good. They cite one study from the Harvard School of Public Health, which is, let's remember, liberal academia, that shows that there's a correlation between autism and Tylenol or acetaminophen use. And their conclusion, I know this sounds insane, is not wrong. I think the problem is that it is also not right. Now, in order to understand what we mean by that, we have to start by understanding what autism spectrum disorder actually is. It is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by persistent social deficits, and restrictive repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. So what does that mean? What is a neurodevelopmental disorder? If I set out to build a house, there's a typical way that a house looks, and there's a typical set of tools that I will use to build a house. I'll use hammer, I'll use nails, and if everything works the way that it's supposed to, I end up with a typical house. Now, how would that house end up differently if I started making changes to the materials that I used? If I used, let's say, foam instead of wood, or if I used a hammer that was a little bit lopsided, how would that house end up looking? And what we see in autism spectrum disorder is that there are probably all kinds of little things that when they compound over the course of the development of our brain result in this autism spectrum picture. The second thing about autism spectrum disorder is that it is a spectrum. So I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but autism spectrum disorder is not one disorder. It is actually millions of individual disorders, individual pictures that we all lump together because they, in the ballpark, look the same. So if we go back to our house analogy, we have a typical house, a cookie cutter suburban house that is built the same way every single time. That's what neurotypical is. But if we think about all of the ways in which a house can be atypical, if I mess with the measuring tape, it'll be crooked in this way. If I mess with the nails, it'll be crooked in this other way. If I use a different kind of wood, or if I use wood instead of concrete, it'll be vulnerable to other things. And so this is what autism is. It's a high degree of variability. And since it's not all one thing, it is not caused by one smoking gun. And we also see this over the course of the spectrum.
Yo, what's wrong with this fucking chat, man? Like, what the fuck is this, man? What is chat doing? I don't get it. Why are you guys doing this? Why are you guys doing this? I don't get it.
Pog 39.
Yo, you guys aren't on the spectrum. This chat is the spectrum, buddy. You have all the debuffs, but your house is fucking is crooked, is too tall. Too short at the same time. Your husband added like 20,000 different materials.
Like, there are some people on the autism spectrum who basically are very high functioning and can essentially lead normal lives. And there are some people whose houses are very, very atypical. The walls don't even support the roof, and they struggle immensely. Now that we understand the neurodevelopmental process, let's get back to Tylenol and autism. The scary thing is that autism rates are definitely on the rise, but the question is why? So Tylenol may actually be a part of it. There was a tweet in 2017 where the Tylenol manufacturers actually said, we don't recommend the use of Tylenol in pregnancy. And if we look at the actual quantitative data, we find that there is some data to support this. So one meta-analysis found that the risk of autism goes up by about 20 to 30% when we use Tylenol. And on the one hand, that may sound like a lot, but it's actually really, really low. So if Tylenol isn't super responsible for it, and we'll still get to that a little bit later, the question is what else could be contributing to the higher rates of autism that we're seeing? And this is where I love it. So xQc even talked a little bit about this, and he suggested that maybe the rates of autism were actually always the same, but we are now better at diagnosing it. And we've seen multiple changes in our diagnostic criteria, so we're catching autism. So it's always been there, but now we're detecting or catching it way higher. And that's absolutely part of the picture. But if we look at larger data sets and meta-analyses for risk factors for autism, we see all kinds of things. The first is that there are all kinds of prenatal or perinatal or even postnatal risk factors for autism spectrum disorder. At the top of the list are things like maternal or paternal age. And if we look at the age at which people are having their first child,
guys,
that age is actually...
Yeah, you said it was part of the picture, not the whole picture. So it was probably not fully correct because that would be priced into the analysis because these guys know what they're doing, at least some of these experts that do all these stats and shit like that. They wouldn't want to be caught at the end going like, oh, did you account for fucking that margin or whatever? They would be cut with their pants down, like it'd be
actually increasing over time.
But
so women are having their first children about 5 years later, and they're continuing to have kids into their 30s and even low 40s. The age at which people become fathers is actually increasing as well by closer to about 3 to 5 years. And we know that maternal and paternal age account for about a 30% increase in risk. But it's not just age. If we look at a list of risk factors for autism spectrum disorder, we see things like gestational hypertension increases the risk by about 30%. Diabetes increases the risk by 50%. And then we see some weird variables like college education and college graduate, which increase it by 50%. And this is where there's a really, really important thing to understand. Correlation does not equal causation. So here's the question.
What if the one that have autism are more likely because the mother is older, and because she's older, she takes more Tylenol because she's more likely to have pain because she's older during pregnancy. So it's like one is reflecting the other.
Question that I have for y'all. What do you think is the association between the age at which you have children and whether you went to college and graduated or not? So if we take college graduates, there's a greater likelihood that they had children when they were older. So when we have this gigantic list of risk factors, what are the biggest smoking guns? And this is one that I really want to highlight.
Well,
respiratory infection increases the risk of autism by 264%. Now we get to another really important principle that I want y'all to understand, which is something called a confounding.
Wait, Chad, that means that if you have a child and he has that, he gets 2.5 autisms off the rip? 2.5 fucking, like, times autism?
Variable.
How the fuck?
If we look at Tylenol, and we say Tylenol
Oh my God,
increases
no,
the
no,
risk
it's percentage.
of autism.
Oh my
The other
God,
thing
I'm
that we
so
have to
fucking
consider,
dumb.
anytime we are looking at the effect of a medication, if a medication is a risk for something, one thing that we must do is ask ourselves, why is the person taking a medication in the first place?
What was it? What was it? Oh, it's respiratory infection. He said it already, brother.
64%. Now we get to another really important principle that I want y'all to understand, which is something called a confounding variable. So if we look at Tylenol and we say Tylenol increases the risk of autism, the other thing that we have to consider anytime we are looking at the effect of a medication, if a medication is a risk for something, one thing that we must do is ask ourselves, why is the person taking a medication in the first place? Is there an association between taking Tylenol and being sick? What is the effect of being sick on the risk of developing autism later in life? And what we find from a deeper dive into the data is that respiratory infections increase the risk by about 264%, whereas the risk from Tylenol is about 20%. This is a tenfold increase in the risk. So it's not necessarily the medication that's causing the problem,
and all the other things that don't affect it, this rate ends up being diluted, which then gives this one 20% when it's actually kind of nothing. It's just because it's diluting the percentage from the ones that don't to the ones that do.
This is a tenfold increase in the risk. So it's not necessarily the
sample.
medication that's causing the problem, but the underlying illness that is actually the largest contributor of risk to autism spectrum disorder. And now things get even weirder. So one of the big things that RFK is really focused on is chronic illness. And I think actually this is great. I think we don't approach chronic illness in the best way that we could in our system of healthcare that emphasizes very Herculean measures in the last year or 2 years of people's lives, right? So we have a system of healthcare that spends hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient on ICU care and heart transplants and things like that. I think all those things are fantastic. We don't do enough for preventive care. We don't do enough for chronic diseases. I think this is great. But here's the really nutty thing. The better your medical system gets, the more sick people you will have. So I want y'all to look at some of these risk factors like threatened abortion, peripartum hemorrhage, brain bleeds. So what would have happened to these children 60 years ago? They would have just died.
Yeah.
Now what's starting to happen is we are having these high risk things. So what is the risk of autism if someone has bleeding in their brain? That risk is pretty high. Now we're actually able to save these children. If we look at some of these things like hypertension or infections, as our medical system actually gets better, there were a lot of children who may have just passed away that may have resulted in abortion. We may not have been able to save that kid. And now we are able to save that kid who had a brain bleed during birth, who had a ruptured placenta right before they were born. And since there's some of these weird cytotoxic, anoxic kind of injuries to the brain, we see this house that should have been put together in this way. Remember, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, which means that now the brain is not growing in the way that it should, and what we end up with is something like autism spectrum disorder. So these are two huge
chat, what the fuck? I'm watching a video. Jesus Christ, what the fuck are those emote combos, man? You guys just chill for a minute. Chill for a minute.
Things that I really want to focus on, which is that part of the reason we're seeing more autism is that we're getting better at diagnosing it. There are a ton of people who have high functioning autism who 50 years ago would have just been odd, but we wouldn't have diagnosed them with anything. The second thing is that we are able to keep people who are sick, especially pregnant mothers and children in the perinatal period and postnatal period, healthier. This combined with things like paternal and maternal age increasing, as well as a host of different medications that have an association with autism, I think all of these things put together explain why autism spectrum disorder is on the rise. And there are a couple of other risk factors that we understand. One is that there are certain genes that are associated with an increased risk of autism.
Yeah, and then let me guess. Let me guess. If you're an older woman, of course, maybe it'll have more autism, child, right? And then a lot of them probably have a slower metabolism now that they're older, and with pregnancy they probably become let's say fatter or whatever, and maybe that hurts their back. Then they have more reasons to take Tylenol during pregnancy, which does impact those amounts. That's why it increased the correlation by a crazy amount, though, right?
We also know that certain environmental exposures like phthalates or nitrogen dioxide are associated with increased risk of autism.
Fat pains is a real
there's
thing.
all kinds of stuff that goes into building a typical house. And if you look at all of the ways that you can interfere with that house ending up typical, all of those things can contribute to autism spectrum disorder. Earlier, I said a 20 to 30% increase in risk for autism spectrum disorder that acetaminophen gives is actually not that big of a deal. Now, this is where things are going to get really, really weird, okay? So there are other medications that increase the risk of autism and actually increase them way more than acetaminophen. And these are medications that I think the current administration isn't a huge fan of. And at the top of the list are SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Now, RFK Jr. has been saying that we over-medicate psychiatric patients way too much, has been sort of concerned about stimulants, concerned about SSRIs. And I think this is another example of I'm not entirely disagreeing with the guy. I do think that we tend to reach for psychotropic medications way faster than we should. But I think the real problem with things like SSRIs is that we sort of don't develop a comprehensive treatment plan that incorporates all kinds of other things. I think SSRIs are great medications, and I think we overprescribe them. So SSRIs increase the risk of autism spectrum disorder by about 80%.
Chat, I fuck with you now, chat. When I was way younger, chat. Dude. I was thinking it's medication. It has nothing to do with fucking depression or whatever, right? And his doctor, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here for a refill on this. And he's like, dude, I'm not refilling this. Let's put you on this. And it was like an SSRI out of nowhere. No, bro, no symptoms, no talks of anything. He said, no, we're not doing this. Here's an SSRI. I was like, dude, what the fuck? That's this
Some studies show that they basically double the risk of autism spectrum disorder, which sounds really scary, right? But when we look at the data, we see a lot of things around statistics that are counterintuitive.
I wouldn't say
even though SSRIs basically double the risk, 99% of people who are on SSRIs during pregnancy will not have autistic children. And about 99% of people who give birth to autistic children were not on SSRIs. Now, how can that be? So if we look at the data, let's just take a look at the actual numbers, okay? So this is the group of people who are autistic, prenatally exposed to SSRIs, right? This is 14. And prenatally unexposed to SSRIs. So in this one study, there are 14 people out of 1,679 who were exposed to SSRIs who ended up with autism. But 1,665 people who are autistic in this study were never exposed to SSRI. So this is where we have to understand that the basic risk is really small. So the risk of having a child with autism is somewhere between 1 in about 3%, all the way down to 1 in about 500. So let's say that the baseline risk of autism is about 0.5%, right? So 1 out of every 200 kids, I'm just averaging different epidemiologic studies, okay? So you basically have a chance of 1 out of 200 to end up with a child on the spectrum.
How come all my friends are autists if it's 1 out of 200? What are the likelihoods of that? It's like 1 in billion. That's crazy. Maybe it's because streamers are autists and that my friends are autists because they're streamers. So streamers cause autism. So that's it. That is it. Streaming use of OBS cause autism.
So even if we double that risk
same logic
from 0.5% to a whopping 1%, the actual risk is still pretty small, right? Are you doubling your odds? Yeah, but the odds are still really, really low. If you sort of think about it, like if I were to double your odds of winning the lottery, what is the likelihood that you would win the lottery? It's still really, really small. And these kinds of statistical things are really hard to understand. Our brain is not designed to understand these kinds of statistics. And this is why some of these things like a Tylenol increases the risk of autism by 20%, 30%, 50%, 100% is actually a very small contributor to the overall risk of being on the spectrum. And so now I think we're getting a picture of what causes autism. So here's the scary thing. I don't think that the stuff in the White House statement is wrong. I think that there are a lot of studies that show an association between Tylenol and autism. I think the real danger is that it's woefully incomplete. For example, one study from about 1 year ago in the Journal of the American Medical Association did a deeper dive into the link between autism and Tylenol. And what they found doing something called a sibling analysis of 185,000 sample size basically found that
I almost had a fucking sting incident.
Tylenol was not responsible for this increased risk. That there were these confounding variables, and once you factor in those confounding variables, you find no association between Tylenol and autism. They also did something really cool, which is a dose-response analysis. And the hypothesis here is that if Tylenol is causing a change to your brain that results in you having autism, the more Tylenol we give, the stronger the risk on autism should be. But they actually found no dose-response relationship. There's some caveats to that too. You don't always see a dose-response relationship. But generally speaking, if something is bad for your brain, the more of we give it, the worse it's going to be for your brain. And so some of these deeper analyses actually suggest that there isn't a strong link. There's one part of my conspiracy.
Okay, but chat. Do we put all other medications to the same level of standard and scrutiny when it comes down to like if it causes autism or not? Like, let's say, do we put every other one? Because I think that why did they target Tylenol with this? Isn't that there's probably some way higher risk factors in all of the medicine or a bunch of other ones. Why did they hone in on Tylenol? Like I'm confused. I don't get it.
Theorist mind, which really gets a little bit. So this is the one thing that I wouldn't trust here is as a part of this statement, they sort of have this one line about Trump is approving a drug, right, that will treat autism symptoms. And that makes me wonder if there's some kind of like lobbying going on here. I don't really know. That's kind of outside of my wheelhouse, but I do wonder about that stuff sometimes. But I think the biggest concern here is that when we make a statement like this and we leave out a lot of complexity, that is going to drive behavior. And the really scary thing is that it could drive behavior in the wrong direction. If we stop using Tylenol, we may be more likely to start using things like ibuprofen or NSAIDs, which have been shown to cause problems with infants' kidneys. They have their own like host of risks associated with it. And the most insidious thing is that when we oversimplify a problem, when we make something that is incredibly complex and has genetic factors, environmental factors, SSRI contributions, potentially Tylenol contributions, paternal and maternal age, infections, fever, when all of these things are considered, then we can understand what really causes autism. The problem is that when we oversimplify it,
this is Indian though. Well, that's just racist, one. But two, okay, when you have a problem with your computer, okay, you click on a video, okay, you're fucking happy, okay. It's an Indian guy that's fucking talking about the problem that your computer has, because you know for a fact it's just gonna get fixed. So if I got a guy like this, right? I'm like, oh shit, I got a problem. And there's probably good likeness is gonna fix my problem. Hey yo, I'm just saying, I'm just putting it how it is. Hey, you wanna get mad at me? I'm just putting it how it is, buddy.
we start to ignore all of those other things. And if we start to ignore a lot of other risk factors like fever and respiratory infections that are associated with a 243% increase, this kind of policy will actually make autism worse.
Yo, when it comes down to the videos that I watch about problems, like it's on my computer as a problem, yo, it's not racism, it's profiling, okay? Okay? It is what it is. I don't give a shit. If a video has like 200 views, it's about this rare problem the computer has, the likelihood is it's gonna get fixed.
We do not care.
In my opinion, I mean, in anecdotal evidence goes up. It goes up in percentage. What do you want? I don't make the rules here. It's just, it's empirical data. It's a positive, good stereotype. When I'm watching videos. Anyway, I think the more I talk about this, the more I'm deep in a bit